Good morning and welcome to this episode of Grumpy Young Guy Reviews. The grumpy guy, well, that's me. So today's episode we're going to be talking about ProPilot. As I said in my previous video, we're going to look at ProPilot, how it's meant to be used, the good parts to it, the bad parts to it. You'll have to excuse the sun today, it's a really bright sunny day, which is great. So we're going to be looking at a little bit more in depth into ProPilot. How it works, what it's meant to do, what it does well, what it does badly, and it does do certain things badly. So the idea today is we're going to take a little trip down the motorway. This video is going to be split into two halves. The first half is basically using ProPilot as we should do, and that's all good. The second part of the video is we are going to be looking at what's the capability of ProPilot if we hack it and don't leave our hands on the wheel. You know, driving like that, and I've been doing this for a fair few hundred miles now to sort of test it out. It really gives you an idea of the shortfalls of ProPilot. Now, it's a very relaxing drive, and I'm going to be doing a demonstration today and going through how it was done. But it's not until you drive without your hands on the wheel completely for, 20-30 mile continuously, no hands on the wheel, that you start to realize kind of how far we are away from fully autonomous driving, especially with this particular system. And we can have a sort of a discussion idea on what needs to be done to go from where we are today, where we are today with ProPilot and all the autonomy that goes with it, how far we are away from being in full autonomous mode. So I hope you find this one quite interesting, really, because we're going to be doing the first part of the video just using ProPilot as it should do. The second part of the video is going to be ProPilot hacked, and we're going to be driving for a reasonable amount of time without our hands on the wheel, with adaptive cruise control and lane guidance locked on, and sort of doing that. So first things first, we need to head to the motorway. Okay, so we've arrived at the motorway. Let's join, and then we'll have a chat. We'll engage ProPilot and see how it works. So the idea of ProPilot is it has almost two separate systems. We have the radar system, and then we have the camera system that goes in with that. So just to make you aware, from a radar perspective, we have one at the front, and then we have two radars at the back of the car as well, and they help us with the lane blind spot assistance. So here we go, we're just going to engage ProPilot now, and I have to set the speed at 60, which is what the variable speed limit is, and set the distance. So there we go, ProPilot's engaged. I can now remove my feet from the accelerator and brake, and we can just drive as we are now. So at the moment, that front-facing radar is keeping us a set distance apart from the vehicle in front, and it's doing that pretty well. The camera is also locked onto the lane, so the idea is it gives me assistance to keep me nice and centre in the lane. Now, ProPilot also has the lane departure warning, which can beep, can vibrate, and you can set that all as we go through on the menu. Now, for me, the adaptive cruise control, the first part of ProPilot, is very good. It does have its shortcomings, because for me what doesn't work that well is the camera, which is up in this unit here, and the front facing radar. They almost don't seem to work together, and what I mean by that is, if I'm driving down the road here now and there's a car in my left hand lane and that car goes to pull out in front of me, it will take a while for the radar to bring it into range, and then all of a sudden we'll hit the brakes and we'll, it's not smooth. See, for me, if the radar and camera were working together, the camera would see the vehicle beginning to move over and slowly begin to reduce my speed, so it wasn't jerky and it was much smoother. So for me, that's the first biggest issue with ProPilot, that they just don't work together that well. So at the moment, the adaptive cruise control has locked on, the lane camera has locked on, So I'm actually free now to take my hands off the wheel. As you can see, we're travelling at 55 miles an hour. But the biggest thing we have here is that there is a warning in place. So the first step is I've got the warning on the dashboard now, and it's saying put your hands on the wheel, and you can now hear the beeping, which slowly gets quicker and quicker and quicker. And if I don't do anything, put my hands on the wheel, then it operates in 2 steps. The first step is it will jab the brakes, and the second area is it will slowly bring the vehicle to a stop with the hazards on, so it's safe, because it kind of assumes that I've not got my hands on the wheel, I'm not in control of the vehicle. So the idea is to bring the car to a safe stop in the lane that you're in. So that could be the outside lane, it could be whichever lane that you're in. That's what that system's decided to do. Now, for me, I now wouldn't buy a car without at least adaptive cruise control. Well, I've had it for quite a while now, in various makes and models. Previous car were 2 Volkswagen Audi Group cars, a Skoda and a Golf. And for me, it works really, really well. But how does this system, the Nissan Pro Pilot system, the Nissan Adaptive Cruise system, how does that compare to other brands? Well, there are a few things that annoy me. Here's grumpy number 1, is that when I disengage Pro Pilot for a few seconds, for a reason I need to make a manoeuvre and I want it off while I do it, that the speed it was set at disappears. Now, I can press resume and the speed will come back, but on the Volkswagen Audi Group system, the speed it's set at goes from green and goes grey. So you know that that's the speed, however it's not engaged. So I know it's something very, very small, but for me, it's an annoying feature that the speed just completely disappears, and it's gone. And then I'm thinking, well, what have I set it to? Grumpy number 2 is that on the Volkswagen Audi Group system, I can set the speed of my adaptive cruise when the car is still without the system engaged. I can just adjust its speed and then engage it. With this system, I kind of have to engage it first and then set the speed, which is, it's a little bit annoying, because often when I drive to work, as I'm driving up to the motorway, I can just tweak and set the speed. When I enter the motorway, engage, and we're done. The only way on this car you can do it is if you're at the set of traffic lights and there has to be a car in front of you. If there's not a car in front of you, this doesn't work. At the traffic lights, I can engage the system, I can then turn the speed up and then press cancel. And that way I know that speed is ready for me when I enter the motorway, hit the button, and it will then take me up to the speed. The next grumpy thing is how long it takes you to take you up to the speed. So it was quite often that I would get the speed ready, as I down the slip road of the motorway, hit engage, and the Volkswagen system, woof, take me up to speed pretty quickly. It wasn't excessive acceleration, however, it did get me up to speed. This system takes forever to get me up to speed. We're going up slowly, and it's a little bit painful. What I've realised is that I have to drive up to the speed and then hit engage, otherwise we'll be here for quite a while. Now, what I do like about this Pro Pilot system is the lane spot guidance, the lane detection, because it uses one of the rear radars in the bumper, and what it does is give me a nice beep in this mirror with a flashing light if there is something to that side when I go to indicate out. And I actually really like that feature, and it works really, really well. Sometimes I wouldn't say it gives you false, but I've gone past the car and I'm indicating in, and it beeps at me. I kind of just accept that because I know that car's there, and I'd rather have the system than not have the system. So Pro Pilot's still engaged. I haven't had my feet on the accelerator or brakes. Just have to have my hands on the wheel at all times. Now, I've got a little bit of a bugbear with this because we're driving along with it. It's locked onto the lane. We're engaged. For me, it can be a little bit more relaxing, but I find is if I'm driving, it's constantly pulling the steering wheel around, and I'm thinking, I feel like either I need to drive or the car needs to drive. Doing it together it's a little bit awkward, because I'm driving along and I constantly feel the steering wheel being pulled left, right and centre, and and I'm thinking, will you just let go of the wheel and I'll do it. Now the nice thing is that I can disengage the steering on the settings menu and still have the adaptive cruise control. Nissan have given us that option, which is a good option. So for me, I generally won't drive with ProPilot steering because I find it keeps annoying me. It keeps dragging on the steering wheel, and often I think it drags a bit too far to the edge of the lane, and I'm not happy with how far we are to the edge of the lane. And if you try and pull it back, it then pulls back again, and I feel like we're almost fighting a little bit. Now, a lot of people have reported that they simply have their hands lightly on the wheel and let ProPilot do the majority of the driving. And you know, that does sort of work, but for me, this level of autonomy, the steering, I mean, I totally understand the lane departure. That's a really, really good feature. So if we didn't have this lane guidance, but we had this lane departure warning, where if you go to drift out the lane, for some reason you lose concentration, it will then pull you back, it'll beep at you, and it'll kind of bring your attention back to that there. So ProPilot, I like it. I think it's a good thing. I've done quite a lot of miles with it now, but the steering, I'm 50-50 on. It kind of works okay, but I often feel that we're fighting, that I'm saying one thing and it's trying to say another thing. So yeah, that's where we are for me with ProPilot. The radar system, the adaptive cruise control system is good, but when a car pulls out in front of you, it takes too long to react. And what happens then is that when the car does pull out, we wait. I can see the car's pulling out. I'm thinking to myself, we need to be slowing down now. He's pulling into our gap. All of a sudden, the car will hit the brakes, maximum regen to slow us down, and it's just that little bit too jerky. You know, and considering these systems have been out for a while now, I'd expect this to be sort of ironed out. You know, interestingly, the Volkswagen system was almost identical. It really had that same problem where the came out, hit the brakes, and it was a little bit, for me, it was a little bit too jerky. I would like to try a few of the other manufacturer systems to see if anybody has kind of got it better, and you know, has got it to the point now where it is that bit more, you know, that much more smoother. Okay, so if you've got any comments on ProPilot, then stick them in the comments below. But for now, what we're going to do is look at, if we were to hack this system and let the car do the driving for us, how well does it do it? Does it do it well? Does it veer out the lanes? You know, what's that kind of option? So we're going to start with a water bottle, and it's got a small hook on it, which allows us to hook it to the steering. So this weighs in, with water in it, at 431 grams. I did find that if we're doing 400 grams, it would still keep nagging you. So I'm going to just click it onto the steering wheel, as you can see there. Now ProPilot is engaged, with cruise is set at 60. I'm just going to increase the speed to 65 now, because we are out of the variable speed limits. So here we go. We're at the point now where the ProPilot system is locked on. It's locked onto the lane, and essentially doing this system here now will just keep me in whichever lane I'm in. If I wanted to change lanes, I have to do that manually, but we're currently doing 65 mile an hour, locked onto the lane ahead. And you know, actually this for doing this works pretty well. Sorry about that interruption. So the bottle's on. It's a rather large item, but for testing this, we've locked onto ProPilot has locked onto the lane, camera is locked on as well, and we're just travelling as we should. So at this point, I'm going to change lanes, so I need to indicate out. You can hear the lane departure warning, and we'll move out myself. Once I have moved into that lane, I wait for the lane light to come on, which is a little green steering wheel, and it shows that it is locked onto the lane. So now we're kind of just driving. The ProPilot system is doing it itself, and this motorway is curving. It's not straight in any stretch of the imagination. But doing this with this aid on here, it does a pretty good job. We can see at the moment I'm drifting. You guys can't see, but I'm drifting just to the edge of the lane then, and ProPilot made that small correction to bring me back into the lane. So you can see we're just sitting, we're driving along. I just want to move back into the inside lane in a moment, which I'll have to do myself. Again, hold the hands on the wheel until the green light comes on. There we go, and then we can let go again. So this hack works surprisingly well. Actually, I wasn't expecting it to work so well. I was expecting it to drift in and out, but it really does work quite well. So if this works so well, why aren't Nissan putting this system in and giving us the ability to take our hands off the wheel completely? You know, where are we from this vehicle doing what we are now, all the way to a full autonomous motorway vehicle? Well, the answer for me is having done a massive amount of mileage on this, you know, a fair few hundreds of miles, the answer is quite far away, and I'm going to explain to you why. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change it. So I'm going to take the water bottle off, because the water bottle is rather large with a hook on the end, and I'm going to put my second testing makeshift item, which is a very, very small block with the same hook on there, and when I hook that on, it's much, much smaller, as you guys can see it just there. And this one weighs in at just a touch heavier. It's about 440 grams. So where are we in terms of autonomy from this vehicle going to a full level of autonomy? Well, for me, we're quite far, and here's why. Because what you have to remember when you do this hack is that this system is actually very basic. It can hold the speed from the vehicle in front of you, it can slow down, it can speed up, and it can do all that. It can do an emergency braking if it needed to, and it simply holds you in the lane that you're in. And that's a key one to remember, because if cars pull in front of us, it does take a bit of time to react. However, I mean, one thing I do notice is on my commute that the road, it twists like that and then comes back, and that twist only lasts for around about 10-20 meters maximum. So as I'm driving down the road, the motorway twists and then it locks back on like that. Now this, with this hack on, doesn't handle it particularly well. As the motorway twists, we drift down into the outside of the line. The system recognizes that quickly and pulls us back. But as a human, I can see the lump in the motorway, and just as we go into it, I apply a small amount of counter steer, because I know that then will enable me to keep in the center of the lane. Now, it kind of makes you realize that this system is very reactive rather than being proactive. And one of for me, the biggest drawbacks is we're basically just locking onto two lines and holding us in the middle, rather than actually looking at what's going on around us. So I'm just going to make a lane change now. You can hear the lane departure warning as a car just comes past me. We'll just increase our speed slightly. We're still at 65 now, and then we let go, and then we've re-engaged into that lane. And the idea of this weight on the steering wheel, of course, is just to simulate me having my hands on the wheel and moving it around. So yeah, we start to realise that this is actually quite it's quite a simple, basic system. It simply locks onto two lines and keeps us there. Now, I've had it a few times where someone's gone to pull in front, and I'm not comfortable with the reaction speed of the vehicle, so I've put my hands on the wheel and disengaged the system and taken over. But also, it starts to get you thinking that if someone goes to pull into my lane that's next to me and starts to veer into me, this has no way of detecting that. We have the side sensors, but they don't react. They're very separate systems. So the side sensors detect the beep, 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 but nothing actually happens. You know, from a steering perspective, all this does is keep us nice and steady in our lane. And you know what? It's when you start doing some mileage in this that you start to realise that this is a real basic system. It's nice, it's relaxing. You can see here that I'll keep my hands here just so you can see, that I haven't touched the steering wheel now in quite a while. I've had no nags, and it's pretty reliable. It's keeping me in the lane. It's keeping me a lane nice and central. it's turning with the motorway, which is a good thing. And yeah, it's kind of doing it itself, which for me is great. You know, it makes this car that little bit better. It really does. So I'm not doing the brakes, I'm not doing the accelerator, or I'm not doing the steering, and it works really nicely. So what do we need to go at that full level of autonomous driving? So as you know, or you may not know, autonomous driving at the moment is set in 5 levels. Level 1 is it will do the steering or the speed, braking, accelerating. Autonomy level 2 is that it will do the steering and the braking and accelerating, so that's level 2, so it'll do both at the same time. And level 3 then starts to move up to, it doesn't require your complete concentration. So I think even a level 2 autonomy, and don't quote me on this, I'd have to double check, even a level 2 autonomy vehicle, you still have to be paying attention. So it will do the steering, it will do the accelerator, it'll do the braking. However, you may need to be prepared to take over at any time. The idea of level 3 and moving up is that you don't have to have complete concentration. Like now, it's active, but I'm watching the road constantly. So this is really kind of a level 1.5 car, because yes, it can do both at the same time, but it doesn't leave you to it. You have to have your hands on the wheel, really. So this is more of a level 1 car with some features moving into, let's say, level 1.5. So how far does this have to go to be at a level 2? Well, that's for, or even a level 3, where it'll do it in certain situations, like this one now on the motorway, but it doesn't require my complete concentration out on the road. So I think actually we're quite far away from that, and we need side cameras, we need more sensors, we probably need dual cameras on the front, which a lot of vehicles are coming with now. Yeah, so I think we're kind of, just make a lane change, I think we're kind of quite far away from this. We're just approaching a section of the motorway now, and I want to show you this, is the capability of doing this hack from a turning perspective. So we're approaching a section where the M42 joins the M5, and it is, as it goes up, it's quite a tight turn. So I'll be able to flick from the front facing and rear facing at the moment. So I'm just going to reduce the speed down to 55, and this sort of actually takes this. So we're moving up now, and as you can see, I'll flick to the front facing as well, this is quite a tight turn. As we go up, it turns around right, and for me, the first time I tried this with this hack on was quite nerve-wracking, but there we go, it makes the turn completely. You can see here on the wheel, and for me, this is quite a tight turn. It's changing motorways. Yeah, it was kind of quite nerve-wracking. I think I've tried this at about 60 mile an hour, and it'll do it. It tails the far edge of the left lane as we go round. Any faster than that, and it starts to go off. But again, we need to remember that this system wasn't designed to do what we're asking it to do now. So you can see here we're going round, and even though that lane's disappeared, it still actually makes a good job of holding us centrally here in the lane. And it only really has a problem now when we need to try and join that motorway. You can see the sun's completely changed and it's getting in the way. And it's at this point now where it would just veer out into that lane, and I wouldn't be happy with that. So let's just take this off for a moment. But it kind of gives you the idea of the system's steering level capabilities. So for me, as a summary, ProPilot is a really good thing. I use it every day, and you know, using this hack test, just to give you an idea, this is a very, very capable system. Just increase the speed and go through. It's a very capable system, but it's only capable in certain scenarios, which is simply car driving straight down a lane. It can't do lane change, I have to do that myself. And cars pulling in and out of it in a busy section is also provides it difficult. For me, the other big thing is undertaking. And this is a problem with every adaptive cruise control system I've worked, with the exception of one Passat, which was quite new, and it sort of managed it sometimes, was undertaking. So there's a slow moving traffic on the middle lanes, and we're in the inside lane, cruise control set at 60, Pro Pilot and everything set, and this will just go thundering down the inside lane as fast as it can up to the maximum speed. And that really is quite worrying, because what you realise is if any one of those cars pull out, this system would have absolutely no chance in doing anything about it. It would beep at you, fine, but it would also smash into the vehicle in front. And we've got to think about that when we come to full autonomy. How is that going to work? Are we going to set it so there is no undertaking? But that's also not going to work, because a lot of times you have to filter through, so you do have to undertake a vehicle. Are we going to set it so undertaking is only at a certain speed, i.e. when we're filtering, you know? And it's really interesting. I watched the Guy Martin program not so long ago, and that was really, really good. It's the people programming this level of autonomy, they have to kind of make decisions. And one was an interesting one. I think he said it was, and I'll paraphrase here, it was you're approaching an obstruction, and I think it was a truck, and one side there was some animals, and the other side there were children, and you've got to make a decision to swerve into one of them, because the vehicle can physically not stop. And the answer is, well, the question was being asked is, which one do you go into? And yeah, that's quite a tough one. I think there was one that was on a truck, and then there was children crossing the road, or animals crossing the road, and the options were veer into the truck, and there's a high chance that you would there'd be a fatality from you, or swerve around them, save your own life, but veer into the children or animals. I can't remember which one it was. And they asked a number of people, and people gave different opinions. You know, and the biggest thing here is, who's going to program it? Because that person programming it, are they going to program it based on their own opinion, or are they going to program it based on other people's opinions? But here's what it comes down to. It comes down to opinion rather than fact. We can easily lock onto a lane, we can easily drive straight, but what happens when we have to deal with those situations? And the answer is, I don't know. It's more of a comment than an answer. That I don't know if a truck's going to come into you here, and you've got a choice of veering into that lane and crashing into somebody, or the truck crashing into you. You know, how are these systems going to work out which is the best option to take? So if you have got any comments, then please let me know. And if not, hit the notification button and subscribe to the channel. We try and do one every few weeks. I'll release a new video. It's not just electric cars, it'll be kind of a mix, really. So today's video was all about Pro Pilot. It was on Pro Pilot on this 2018 Nissan Leaf, and it was looking at how it works as standard, and I've given my thoughts on that. And also, if we were to apply a small hack to the system, a small weight here on the steering wheel to simulate my hands on the wheel, how well does this Pro Pilot system perform, and how far have we got to go before we get to full autonomy? And I'll catch you in the next video. Thank you very much.